Hello, have you been here before? Welcome back. If not, hi, my name is David. I make videos talking about media that I want to talk about. Inspired by the Dead Meat channel and their series of kill counts, I am doing a kill count for Malevolent Blackstone seasons 1 through 6, created by Harlan Guthrie. If you've seen this intro before, you may skip over to this time code. Malevolent is a horror podcast created, written, directed, edited, voice acted, and scored by Harlan Guthrie, which revolves around Arthur and John, a fragment of the King in Yellow, as they survive horrifying monsters and face eldritch forces. And a lot of people die, so I'm going to be counting these kills. In the same vein of my videos ranking every single episode of Malevolent, go check that out if you so desire, I will be splitting the kill count into 3 videos, one for seasons 1 and 2, then 3 and 4, and then 5 and 6. I have already done kill counts for the Magnus Archives and several books, so check that out if you so desire as well. I'd be very grateful if you did so. Similar to the Magnus Archives kill count, I will be going episode by episode, listing the people killed and giving context, explanations, and critiques about them. Some kills are very explicit, while some are implied or referenced, and generally, I use one special rule. If the kill is used for storytelling, if it's part as sort of like the horror genre, then I will count it. Monsters, bones, and vague mass casualty events will also be counted depending on what is being described and focused on, and of course I'll explain more when I get to those exceptions. So without further ado, please join me as I count all the kills in Malevolent. Alright, seasons 3 and 4. I am drinking an energy drink right now. It's a little late for that. That's fine. So that way I can be revved up while doing these. Yeah. We are following right after Season 2 ended. If you remember, in Season 2, at the very end, John and Arthur encounter the King in Yellow, who wants to take John for himself to become whole once more. And John doesn't let that happen. Arthur doesn't let that happen. Arthur stabs his neck with Cain's dagger so that he can die. And John makes a bargain, and the King in Yellow boots Arthur out of the Dreamlands, and Arthur finds himself in like this cold wasteland. So we find ourselves now in Coda. He goes to the cabin and makes a deal with Cain and brings in Yellow into his head now. But no one dies here. Part 21, The Unconquerable, Arthur and Yellow, who are navigating this new weird relationship. They go into Addison, and they're trying to figure out what's the next few steps. They hear some inklings of something odd going on, and no one dies here. In part 22, The Town, Arthur and Yellow are exploring Addison, and they learn about the Larson mine and how it was abandoned. They also learned that a surveyor had come to the Larson mines to figure out if it's still usable or something. They haven't seen him, but he might have some information for them. But they do find the body of the surveyor, so we can count him. He was killed by Larson's child. Larson's child is what I'm calling the invisible monster. That is the central monster of this season. I think this is really enigmatic monster because it's invisible, where we get a good sense of what it might look like because of the tentacles and like the sounds of it. But we still don't know what it is. I've asked around and no one really knows what it is. So I'm just calling it Larson's child. There's a character later that calls it Larson's child. And because of Larson's child, Arthur almost dies as well, but he doesn't because, well, he gets gravely wounded. And he's picked up by Larson, Wallace Larson himself, which leads us into part 23, The Past, where Arthur is being nursed back to life by Larson, and we also meet Uncle there. And as Arthur is, recovering, he hears the voice of a woman, and then he also hears the woman being killed by Uncle. So we're adding her to the list. As Arthur and Yellow are trying to escape Larson estate, they do stumble upon a room with a bed and a shriveled up husk of a body. And Yellow, who doesn't know what he can do, when Arthur touches the body, Yellow sees the man. He sees Andrew, who, is Wallace, who's Larson, talking to the man, saying that he's going to be with him soon at some point or something or another, because he's about to die, but because of the cold fallen star thing, he will be brought back to life, maybe? Not sure. Either way, I'm going to count this unnamed Larson man as to being killed by Larson himself, I assume it's like a mercy kill or a sickness, or like, let me actually just kill you to get your power. Not fully sure. I'm just counting it at Larson because that's the easiest way to do that here. And then there's a moment where Arthur and Yellow find like a flute, right? They find the flute in like a knoth or something, and they're ambushed by Uncle and they get knocked out. And Arthur has a memory, a dream almost, of him in the prison pits with John at the end of season 2. And this is where they meet Faust. And so when Faust is dumped into their prison pit along with them, they know that the King in Yellow is trying to bait them to kill them or have Faust kill them or something like that. He was holding like this like cord, like a braid of something, and they weren't sure what it was. But the moment that Arthur touched it, John was able to see the death of an unnamed woman in the pit being killed by Mr. Faust. So that's someone on the list. And right after that, Arthur kills Mr. Faust. A sort of, not revenge because he didn't know the woman, but definitely like, I need to kill him before he kills me. So we can add Mr. Michael Faust onto the list, which is why I did not add him in the prior episode, because we just saw his bone. But now we get full confirmation. Yeah, Arthur killed him so he could eat his body. And that made John go insane, because every single time Arthur ate the body of Mr. Faust, John would rewind and rewatch Michael Faust's death. So that made him go a little insane, and then, right after they meet the King in Yellow. But anyways, we can add Michael Faust to this list. We also get an exposition dump about Larson himself, about how he built this town and named it after his own daughter, Addison, and he had lost his wife and like 2 sons. I'm not counting the wife and 2 sons because they died off-screen in the past. They're not used at all in the story. However, I am counting Addison Larson herself, who was killed by Larson to make Larson's child. Now, her death is a little dubious because he said he sacrificed her and monsters tore her apart, but then she is also the monster, Larson's child, but not fully sure. That girl's dead. He killed his daughter. In what capacity she stayed dead, I'm not sure. That's terrifying, but we can count Addison here. In part 24, the mine, we have Arthur pushed into the mine. John's back, Yellow's gone, somewhere, we don't know. And they encounter a bunch of cultists sitting around a fire pit, and they're all chanting, they're all scared, and they're all ram-like. They have like horns growing out of them. And one of them is killed by Larson's child. It appears out of nowhere, just tears its head off, and eats the brain of the cultist, and then it just leaves, and Arthur and John are terrified of what it can do, especially because it is invisible. So that's fun. Part 25, the cracks. Arthur and John are able to escape the mines. They find themselves in sort of like the foundations of Larson Estate. That's like this like castle or something like that. And inside it, they find a prison that holds this man called Matthew, who they're trying to get information about regarding Larson, regarding the Cult of the Fallen Star. And just as he's about to tell Arthur that he needs him to go to New York, he's killed by Cain, which was confirmed in part 40, The Order 2, who had placed Matthew in that location to lure Arthur to New York and also help John get Arthur there. But Matthew, his head exploded right in front of Arthur and John, which is that was a really fun moment. It was horrifying, but really fun.
The Black Stone. The Black Stone. Jesus!
Part 26, the bedrock. Arthur and John are finally back into Larson Estate, and they discover other things, they discover other lore. But the main thing here is that they find Uncle sort of sitting alone, and Arthur kills him in revenge, in anger for killing the woman, for hurting him, and that leaves him and John in a sort of weird, bad state, because John does not like that Arthur has turned into this bloodthirsty revenge maniac. Well, when I first listened to it, I was like, okay, John, like, he's gone through a lot. But now, in hindsight, John's gone through a lot as well. So I can kind of get it. But also, Uncle was going to kill them, so gotta take out that threat. And that definitely fuels Larson's hatred towards Arthur, which will continue in the next season. In part 27, the Roots, Arthur agrees with John and he goes back into the mines to be able to save the cultists controlled by Larson's child. They want to kill Larson's child. And when they return, they go into a building and they find like this abandoned, like it looks like a foreman office or something like that. And inside it, they meet this person that I'm not fully sure what they're called. The transcript only refers to them as like the person. They don't have any dialogue. And there's a moment where it calls itself Itzley or Eatsley, not fully sure. The fandom also calls this person Rafters because he was found in the rafters in that location. But to me, in my notes for a long time, it's always been Itzley. Not fully sure what the name is, but that's where they encounter him. Itzley gives them a lot of exposition about the Larson's child, including that Larson had killed a bunch of children trying to get Larson's child to be summoned. So I'm going to count like at least one child confirmed to have, because we don't know how many children, but we know that, you know, there was the woman in the Larson estate who was killed. We know Addison was killed to make the Larson child. So I'm just going to count one child for the general children who were sacrificed in attempts to make Larson's child. Later in the episode as well, Itzley is leading them to an obsidian deposit to be able to find a weapon, because obsidian is the only thing that can actually hurt and defeat Larson's child. And when they're there, Larson's child attacks and kills Itzley, really sad, and also attacks and almost kills Arthur, also really sad. Actually, it's really sad that in actuality, Arthur doesn't die here. He sort of like gets to the point of death, and then Cain, at the beginning of part 28, The Unconquerable, stops him from dying, and so he's just sort of suspended. And we have, you know, the revelation that him and John had some sort of agreement when John was away. So that's really interesting. And then, armed with an obsidian blade, they confront Larson's child. Using that blade, they cut off all of the tentacles that are attached to the cultists so that they survive. And then Arthur gets attacked, and attached to his brain gets attached by Larson's child. And he speaks to it, and he's able to harm it with the flute that they had found. And then Arthur kills Larson's child. And I really like that he made an effort to free the cultists before killing it, knowing that if he would have killed or he didn't know it, but he suspected that if he killed Larson's child before severing all the cultists, they also would have died, which would have also made the count. At least I'd have to go back and see how many cultists start speaking. But he made sure not to do that, so no one died, except for Larson's child. Which, similar, I guess, to the widow and Shobnagrath, is she heard at times because it is Addison who was sacrificed to make the child, but I'm just marking it as a monster here. After this, Arthur and John head to New York, and we get the revelation that yellow has been put into Larson's head, which leads us into season 4 and Prelude, where we have a prelude of Larson hiring the butcher, Collins, to kill Arthur. And we do get I guess this was a flashback of the butcher killing a barber, seemingly randomly. He kills a barber in his hunt to find Arthur. And later we'll learn that Arthur had stopped by that barber, which is why that barber was killed by the butcher. In part 29, The Train, Arthur encounters the butcher, and they have this battle of wills right before he is able to decouple the train and separate himself from the butcher. No one dies here. Part 30, The Tenant, they are in New York. They're trying to figure out a way how to evade the butcher and find a place to stay. They meet Marie, and they get into her apartment. No one dies here. And at the end of the episode, once acquiring a bed, they go to sleep, and Arthur finds himself in a nightmare, part 31 of The Nightmare, where Scratch puts him into a nightmare of various different events happening in the past, trying to get him to do something. We don't know what yet at the very beginning of the episode, but we're getting to something. A lot of it is looking at Arthur's past and things he's done to people, which makes him feel guilty. especially of letting Thoreau die. But also, we do get a past moment of him drinking in the pub with his friend while Bella, his wife, died in childbirth. And because we get him in that present, drinking at the bar, knowing that Bella is in the hospital, and then all this entire thing about how he was busy drinking at the pub, and there was a moment in time when Bella had died and Arthur went to pick up Thoreau, that Thoreau was not loved by anybody in the world, and that haunts him the entire time, the entire life. And so I'm going to count Bella here in the kill count. In part 32, The Widow, Arthur wakes up and finds himself in a different room in Marie's home, and John is like, hey, you just let somebody go, and crossed, like there was a line of dust on the floor, you crossed that and they just left. What was that? So that was Scratch, right? While they are investigating, they find a hidden room in Marie's house, and they hide inside it when Marie and this other man appear. In Marie and eventually we'll learn to be Oscar's conversation, we learn that Marie's husband, Albert Pilon, was killed, which was confirmed in part 33, the father, when Arthur was manipulating Oscar, and we also saw as a vision from Scratch. I'm going to count him killed by Marie in terms of she was trying her best to get Scratch out of Albert and ended up killing him in the process, and so Oscar helped cover all of that up. So we can count Albert on the list as well. Inside the hidden location, they also find a dead body. It's sort of just bones. We know this to be not Edward William Allen, not with the exclamation point, like the not them, because we don't know who this actually is, but they took the name of Edward William Allen, and he died while he was summoning Lilith. Now, we do get in a later episode, part 57, about Lilith manipulating him and having him do this ritual to get her into their world, but Cain messed up the entrance, and so that led to Lilith being severed and turning into Scratch. I don't know if he was killed by Cain or Lilith, or just died summoning Lilith. I'm not sure, and I'm not too comfortable choosing one or the other, so I'm just going to say he just simply died summoning Lilith. He might have died in an aftermath of Cain disrupting the ritual, not fully sure. There's not enough information, and Cain doesn't need any one more death, does he? When Arthur is trying to convince Marie into hiring them to investigate and find Hattie, her sister, who is possessed by Scratch, he tells her this story of an investigation that he says happened to himself, but in reality happened to someone else. And this story is true and used for horror, and it is repeated and detailed by the Butcher in part 34, The Butcher. So any deaths that happen in this story actually happen, and I can totally see this depicted as like a little animatic, a little like backstory or whatever. So I'm just going to count some of these kills, not all of them. I'm going to count Andrew Christian, who was killed by Elijah Strong, Andrew Christian being the senator that had reported his daughter missing. He was eventually killed by Elijah Strong when it was discovered that he had killed the mother of the girl and had kidnapped her and raised her as his daughter. I'm not counting the mother of this girl because that was too far in the past, being killed by Andrew Christian. Her death is more as backstory and not part of the story. However, I am counting the daughter who committed suicide after being kidnapped and everything that was happening. I'm also counting Elijah Strong, who was killed by the Butcher, mainly because Elijah Strong is a past character. I believe it is a character in a actual TTRPG play that was run. And he also, owned he worked in the office that Arthur works in now. And so I'm going to count him here because he's an important person to the backstory of this story, And in this episode, Arthur does report it being a suicide, but it was later confirmed by the Butcher in The Butcher that he killed Elijah Strong. It's very ambiguous as to how he killed Elijah Strong because, Arthur said it was a suicide, so how did he make it look like a suicide while he was stuck in prison? Because Elijah Strong was in prison after killing Andrew Christian. We don't know. It's fun to speculate. Part 33, The Father, we have Arthur going to talk to Oscar and then going to talk to Daniel to try to get a ring of the Freemasons that will hopefully get them closer to the Freemasons, but also to get them closer to the cult of the fallen star. No one dies here. At the very end, Daniel is shot through the door by the butcher, but he does survive, thankfully. So he's not going on the count this time. Part 34, The Butcher, is a really fun episode because we get it all within the butcher's point of view, which is really fun. And so we get a litany of kills here. He encounters a stranger that had helped hide Arthur, and Butcher kills him in retaliation. So that poor stranger just died. And then he encounters officers Joan and Con, who try to arrest him. They figure out that he is the butcher, and I forget which one of those two is like, oh, I've heard about him. Oh, God. Yeah, the butcher kills them both. As the butcher is stalking Arthur, Arthur tries to get him to talk and is telling about Elijah Strong. He's like, oh, I heard about the butcher because of Elijah Strong. And the butcher's like, oh, Elijah? You mean the guy I killed in prison using my super eldritch powers because he's an avatar of the hunt? Oh. And then he tells Arthur his side of the story, which is also we get, I forgot to mention, in Arthur's story to Marie, he never names anybody. But here we get actual full names, Andrew Christian and Elijah Strong. There was this man called Michael Higgins who had a briefcase that was attached to his hand with cuffs. And he was just told to get the briefcase. But I'm going to count him, even though he doesn't say outright that he killed him. But we know that the butcher likes killing people. So I feel like that's a pretty easy leap of logic or thought to be like, yeah, the butcher killed this guy to get the briefcase. I think Parsimony, Michael Higgins, is dead. And at the end of the episode, the butcher ties Arthur down onto a chair and is about to torture and kill him, but he gets a call from Larson saying that he wants Arthur alive, so the butcher leaves. Oh no, he gets a call from, Larson tells him that someone survived his rampage, and that is Daniel, and he needs to go put him down, so he goes to the hospital, and Arthur has to save Daniel from the butcher, which is when we lead into part 35, The Deal, where he makes a deal with a Scratch to put the stone that helps Scratch possess someone into someone's pocket by the end of the night. And Scratch helps him get out. No one dies in this episode. Arthur goes to the hospital to stop the butcher and has a long conversation with the butcher that is really compelling. And then Noel, the detective, is there, handcuffs and arrests the butcher. Yay, day saved. There is a moment I want to highlight as per the kill count, that the butcher asks Arthur how many people he's killed. And because he looks at Arthur and he sees himself reflected on Arthur. He's like, you are the kind of person to have killed people. I know, I can smell it on you because I'm an avatar of the hunt and I can smell that. And so under pressure, Arthur says he's killed 7 people. Now, I was looking at the list. He also says that he maybe killed most of them in self-defense, but the butcher's like, you still kill them. So I'm trying to think, what people did he kill? He obviously did kill Kellen. He obviously did kill the widow in caves. Maybe a monster, maybe a person, I don't know. Faust, Uncle. Maybe he's counting the driver in part 3 that died in the crash. Maybe. He's also maybe counting the lighthouse keeper. Like I said before, he might blame himself for it. I'm not counting the lighthouse keeper killed by Arthur, but he might blame himself for killing him. And he might also be counting, he might be definitely counting Eddie, but John killed Eddie, and he knows that John killed Eddie, but to the outside world that doesn't know that John's in here, he is responsible for Eddie's death, so he may be counting Eddie. And then, is he also counting Farrow here? I'm not fully sure. In terms of the 7 people he killed, Farrow was definitely the first one, quote unquote, who, through negligence, but he didn't actually kill her. So I'm not sure who he's counting. I will say it's definitely Kellen the widow, Faust, Uncle, Eddie, Farrow. Who's the 7th one? Maybe Lighthouse, maybe the driver. I'm not fully sure. Oh, and maybe he's counting Parker as well, but John definitely killed him. So maybe he didn't. He is counting Parker. I'm not fully sure about that either. So I don't know who he's saying. I don't know. I don't know which 7 people he's counting maybe having killed. If you have an idea, if you have an opinion, please let me know. I'm not fully sure. Moving on to part 36, The Faith No One Dies Here. This is mostly an Oscar-centric episode, really fun episode. Oscar does give Arthur like a backstory about how he had like this young childhood friend who was beaten a lot by this priest, and I think he almost died, but he didn't. And Oscar beats the priest that was beating his friend, and he almost kills him, but he doesn't. He makes a point to say that the man survived, and I can't add him to the count, and no one else dies in this episode. Part 37, The Farm. Arthur, John, and Oscar are investigating the Edward William Allen farm. This is where, in their investigation about Scratch, Oscar uncovered the address of Edward William Allen's farm, so they head there. And in their investigation, this first episode, no one dies. It's just the three of them, and they discover a bunch of different things. There's no dead bodies. There's no monsters that attack yet until the very end when an insect attacks and burrows its way into Oscar's hand. And then Oscar's hand begins to go crazy, and so they have to chop off Oscar's hand. But Oscar survives that, obviously. I don't know if I should count his hand as in terms of like an insect being killed, but it does scurry away. But no one dies in this episode, specifically. In part 38, The Tear, though, Arthur does find a notebook, a journal, written by not Edward William Allen, who talks about how he was ensorcelled and trapped by this nightmare walker, this person, Scratch/Lilith, who was trying to get him to do this ritual. And he finds this farm that has like the something buried underneath, and he needs to get that thing unburied. And so he finds his family, and we can count Edward William Allen himself, his sibling of unknown gender, and his two parents, who were killed by not Edward William Allen, I always mess up with that. Edward William Allen, who took his name, which is why he's not Edward William Allen, to summon Lilith, fail, move to New York, fail, die, Scratch. You know what I mean? So that was all depicted in a journal. So I'm going to count them because we know that to be a fact. And then in the last episode, they encounter these insect monsters, and these insect monsters begin to attack Arthur and John when they are trying to start this ritual to seal the tear in the farm that eventually will release Scratch to become Lilith. In this moment, the insect monsters do attack them. Arthur does specifically kill one of these insect monsters. Just one, because the moment he kills one of them, the rest of them just fuck off. And I'm like, they could have done more. They could have been a more menacing monster, but they weren't. But we do get at least one monster kill. Part 39, The Detective, tying up loose ends with Scratch. Arthur has a conversation with Marie, and Marie tells him about her son who died in the war, Frederick, we eventually learn. I was tempted not to count Frederick at this point, but because we see him later in the Dark World, I can count Friedrich here, because this is an important part of Marie's backstory and eventually will become an important character in season 6. So I'm just going to count him here because of that. Arthur then goes and beats up a guy in the Freemasons bathroom to get information about the Cult of the Fallen Star meeting, and then later has a conversation with Noel, who gives him even more important backstory about the plot itself and how he used to work with Roland Cummings. Noel used to be Charlie Dowd, who was in the war with a friend named Noel who died. I'm not counting his friend who died in the war, the former Noel. And then Charlie took the name of Noel, who lived in Harper's Hill, so there's this serendipity there as well. And then he worked with Roland Cummings as a private investigator as well. He gives some backstory about how they discovered some sort of artifact in Egypt, which is the Black Stone or the Grey Stone, one of the stones. And in that investigation, in that backstory, Roland Cummings disappears. Noel figures out that he was killed by the King in Yellow. And we have the King Yellow. I have yellow here, but that's just the King Yellow. You know what I mean. Noel was taken into the Dreamlands, tortured by the King Yellow, trying to find where this stone is. And the King Yellow used Roland Cummings' visage to try to convince him, try to tell him about the stone. But obviously Noel didn't know anything about that. And so he's able to escape using the help of Lorik, who is a Kana, and so he tells Charlie / Noel that he will eventually meet someone who will have a familiar voice in his head and is holding the lighter of his former partner, Roland Cummings, who is Arthur. And Arthur meets Lorik. He helps Lorik escape from the pits, and Lorik says, "I've helped someone before escape from your world." So closing out that circle here. So yeah, Roland Cummings did die. So Roland Cummings, Amanda Cummings, Delphine. Oh my god, did I count Delphine? Oops. Anyways, what I'm saying is that the Cummings family are all dead now. In part 40, the Order 1, Arthur, John, and Noel infiltrate the meeting of the Cult of the Fallen Star. During the meeting, Larson himself appears, has a little coup, and takes over as the grand leader of the cult. One man, Luther, speaks out against him, and in retaliation, Larson kills him using Yellow, who is able to project and strangle and kill Luther. So I'm counting Luther killed by Yellow specifically, because Yellow is the other King in Yellow. I guess there's no King in Yellow in the Dreamlands either. Following that, in part 40, the Order 2, we have the conversation between Arthur, John, Noel, the Butcher's there as well. That was a really fun reveal. And Larson, the Grand Vizier, a bunch of elders attack as well. In the fight that ensues, the Grand Vizier is killed by the Butcher. We hear that shot. And then there are 4 elders that we can count being killed by Arthur and the Butcher. John notes Arthur killing 1 elder. He also sees the Butcher kill and shoot 2 elders. He also notes that Noel is also shooting, but no confirmed kills there. I would assume that Noel does kill some of them, but those shots that we hear could be misses, could be hitting something else. No actual confirmation through the text that Noel killed an elder. And then later, an elder attacks and Arthur kills that. So Arthur and the Butcher both get 2 elders killed at different times. It's like Arthur, Butcher, Butcher, Arthur. And at the end of the episode, final confrontation, Larson is injured. He had just shot Noel through the neck, and Noel is dying from his neck wound. The Butcher appears, and they find the Grey Stone in a plinth, and John begs Arthur, just get to the Grey Stone, just touch it, just get it, please. And Arthur goes up and is about to get it when everything freezes, and John is like, what is happening? And Cain appears, and he's like, hey, so I'm here to mess things up. He is talking to John, is talking about this deal, and John is like, I'm going to tell Arthur the truth, and Cain is like, you already have. I froze everything, but they can all hear. So that was a really fun moment. And of the 3 allies and enemies around them, right? So I'm not doing this in order. I'm just doing this for dramatic effect. First, Noel disappears. Oop, we don't know where he went. Threshold. He's not dead. We know that he's not dead. Cain says something about he's not dead. He's somewhere in Spain or something. I don't know. Larson, his eyes explode and he gets sent away to the Dreamlands. And the Butcher, really fun moment here. We know from his POV episode that he hears this music in his head, which is like his power, his insanity, the avatar of the huntness of him. And he confronts Cain, who right before this, Larson is like, you are Nyarlathotep. And Cain's like, I don't like that name, which is when he makes his eyes explode and he disappears, whatever. He talks to Cain, the Butcher, and is like, we're gonna stop this. He just thinks he's just a guy. He's about to shoot him. And Cain is like, all right, calm down. The Butcher stops hearing music in his head, and then his head explodes.
But the song is over. I don't hear the music. Jesus fuck!
That's so good. That's so... Jesus Christ. So, the Cain kills the Butcher, and we obviously know Larson and Noel survive wherever they're taken. And then we get into the next season. But for now, that's the end of season 4. Now to get to the statistics. I counted 37 people / monsters killed in seasons 3 and 4, 12 in season 3, and 25 in season 4. 37 deaths over 2 seasons leads to 18.5 kills per season. With 37 deaths and 23 episodes, that's the 20 main episodes, Coda, Prelude, And the order part 2, we have 1.61 deaths per episode. This is gender distribution. We have 6 women, 22 men, 6 monsters, and 3 of unknown gender. For individual body count, starting from the lowest, John has 0 kills. He didn't kill anybody this season. Kane has 2 confirmed kills, that being Matthew and the Butcher. Larson has 3 confirmed kills, and so does Larson's child, like father like monster, I guess. Not Edward William Allen has 4 confirmed kills, that is his namesake and the namesake's family. Arthur has 6 confirmed kills, and the Butcher has 9. Now I'm going to do a running total for just gender distribution and individual body counts. I'm not yet doing the individual numbers and stuff. That's for later. For the gender distribution between seasons 1 through 4, we have 12 women, 38 men, 14 monsters, and 16 of unknown gender. And the running total for the individual body counts from seasons 1 through 4, Arthur and Kane are both tied with 11 kills each, followed quickly by the Butcher at 9, and John with 4, along with not Edward William Allen, also at 4. And like I said before, Larson and Larson's child are both matching at 3 kills each. Like I said before, the Best Bookmark Award and Skipped Scene Award will be given to the pairs. So for seasons 3 and 4, the Best Bookmark Award for my favorite kill is going to go to the Butcher being killed by Kane, having his music stopped in his head and then his head exploding. So fun. Really great. Also, a callback to Kane killing Matthew, but Matthew was less an important character, and we were in the Butcher's head, so we were invested in this character. So that's why I like that kill a lot. And the Skipped Scene Award kill will be going to the insect monster that Arthur killed in the Edward William Allen farm. Like I said, I've said it prior in my ranking video, I think these insect monsters were not used well, and he just killed one and the rest just left and didn't bother him again. But they were supposed to be this threat, and I didn't quite enjoy how it was implemented in the story. So giving it to the insect monster. So that is the kill count for seasons 3 and 4. Thank you so much for coming on this journey with me. If you have not seen the kill count for seasons 1 and 2, please go check that out. And I will have seasons 5 and 6 out pretty soon as well. So keep an eye out for that. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share with your friends. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to be passionate, and I'll see you later.